Hello and welcome to Vergecast, the flagship podcast of Samsung DeX enthusiasts.
And me.
And Alex Cranz. Hi, I'm Nilay. I'm your friend. Alex Cranz is here.
I don't know what DeX is. No, I've used it. You're
going to find out. David Pierce refuses to use DeX, so we've replaced him with Dan Seifert, who's going to show us his DeX setup today.
I'm the DeX defender.
It's coming. Actually, David's just on vacation.
Yeah.
Yes.
But for a moment, you thought that I was so hardcore into Samsung DeX that I clipped my friend from his own show, didn't you?
Yeah. I would have believed it.
It's like, that's who we are now.
Yeah. You and Dan are both like very passionate DeX defenders.
In different directions.
Totally different directions. And David's like, no.
Yeah. If you don't have a strong opinion about Samsung DeX, you can't be a pro or con.
I'm forming one right now so I don't get ejected from the room. It's going. It's coming.
No, David is on a very well-deserved vacation. Dan is filling in for him. Hi, Dan. How you doing?
I'm all right. I am not recording through DeX, to be clear. We'll get into it. Not the right tool for the job.
I saw Dan in the office the other day, and he goes, look at this. And he pulls out what, by all accounts, looks like a laptop. And we'll let people look at it in a minute. It's nuts. And he's got his like phone magneted onto the side, and he's like, it's DeX. And I was like, that's awesome. And I was like, you have to come on the Vergecast and talk about it. And the first thing Dan said to me was, I will not record through this. I don't trust it enough. He just like, nothing mission critical is happening here. Dan, show us your just frankly absurd Galaxy Fold Samsung DeX laptop setup.
It's so good.
I'm going to try and show it to the camera as best as I can.
But remember, it's a radio show. So if you're in your car right now, pull over and close your eyes. And in your mind's eye, imagine what Dan is saying, or alternatively, pull over and watch this on YouTube. Those are your two choices.
Yeah. So this is like not a new thing, to be clear. I bought a Next Dock, which is a lap dock thing. It's been out for a couple of years. This idea has been out for like well over a decade. You plug your phone into it. It's a laptop looking thing, but there's no guts inside of it. There's no computer inside of it. It's just a touchscreen, keyboard, trackpad, battery, and you plug your phone into it. But what I did was I got this magnetic mount.
It's like a folding MagSafe mount.
So I put a MagSafe. If anyone's been following me on any threads or Mastodon, you might have seen that I put a MagSafe ring on the back of my Z Fold. And then I bought this magnetic mount that I stuck to the back of the Next Dock. And so now I've got a DeX setup with my phone on the side. And it's effectively a dual screen DeX.
Yeah. It's the world's worst Chromebook.
Wait, is it a dual screen or a triple screen? Like, is the DeX?
It's dual. See, there's two.
Yeah, but the Fold, I almost feel like is a dual screen already.
Technically, it's triple screen because the back of the Fold has a screen that's not being used.
Yes. If I could display something on the screen for people sitting across from me at the coffee shop.
I am actually astonished that DeX doesn't put up a full screen ad on the back of the Fold screen that's like, you're witnessing the power of Samsung DeX.
Yes, now go buy a fridge. That would be quite wonderful, actually. But no, it's a dual screen thing. I got my phone on one side. The cool thing about this setup is that you can use the phone as a phone.
You can.
And so like that looks like a phone. Then on the other side is the DeX interface.
It is also significantly better than what you were rocking.
It is such a vast improvement over my attempt to use DeX. The problem with it is that you still have to use a Galaxy Fold.
You have to buy this fake laptop.
I don't have a problem with that, but
I did not enjoy 1 minute of using the Galaxy Fold. Just every piece of that just made me, and that's not to say I don't enjoy using Android. I like using Android. The Galaxy Fold is a very particular device with very particular demands, and
it's got a particular set of skills.
Yeah, and the skills are being clunkier than a regular phone.
Maybe, but it can do a lot more than a regular phone. I think like just to like back up on the DeX conversation here, I think there are like two things that are appealing about DeX. One is what you've been trying to do, Nilay, which is like, I'm going ultra lightweight. I'm just traveling with my phone and I roll into the office, plug into a hotel desk, and I have a desktop setup with a keyboard, mouse, and a big screen there. That is one dream. The other path that's interesting to me, at least, is the setup that I've got here, which is like, you could say, well, you're just carrying around as much as a MacBook Air and a phone anyways. The difference is I don't have to like sync between two different devices here. Everything's running off the phone. all of my data is running off the phone, and it's using my phone's internet connection. So what this is doing is essentially giving me a laptop-like experience with integrated cellular that I can't really get through Apple or really through a lot of other parties. So that is like the interesting thing. All that said, both paths can lead to madness, and there's a lot of jank involved in either one of them. I just find it pretty fascinating, A, that it works at all, and B, how far it's come since I first experienced Dex way back in like 2018. It is wildly different.
You don't find it fascinating.
No,
you are
no.
delighted by it.
I'm delighted by gadgets, even if they don't work as well as some other solutions.
DMs
they let me
from
do
you
different things.
About this thing. You were just like, look at it, it works. And it looks cool.
It's
It looks
very
cool
cool
as
that it
hell.
Again, the beginning of my Dex journey started by knowing Dan had been Dex pilled.
Yeah. But then what happened when you saw that there was like a fake laptop involved?
Well, so first I was like, okay, this is so much closer
Yeah.
to what I thought I wanted.
Right.
And then he showed me the next dock, which is the most aggressively 16:9 laptop in the world.
Yeah.
Like the amount of bezel that is on the bottom of that display.
You can see it from here.
It's a good inch below the display.
You could
bezel.
make that laptop 4.3 just by reclaiming bezel.
Yes.
It's a lot of bezel. And then it's still Dex, which is clunky and
What if you left the laptop at work? And
yeah,
just bring the
what if
phone?
I just had a desk with a laptop on it that I left here, like I used to do in the before time? That's where we're going.
But see, if someone steals this one, they're not going to get important Nilay secrets.
Yeah. You can't log into it if there's no phone.
It's just a fake laptop.
Look, I know it's the dream is that you just walk around with a cool phone.
Yeah.
Just plugging it into stuff and having it turn into your thing.
Yeah.
That's the dream. We all agree that's the dream.
100%.
You throw it in the cup holder of your car, the car lights up, and it's your phone.
Yeah.
You can sort of get there, but you have to experience CarPlay, for better or worse.
It's great.
You come to the office, you throw it on a magnetic charger, like a pad, the screen lights up, you're doing all your stuff. Everyone knows what the dream is.
Yeah.
I get emails by people who are like, I feel you on the dream. And then you sit down and you're like, I have to use this Galaxy Fold. Mm-hmm. Which again, like the screen is just like a bubbly, wavy experience.
I mean, I don't know if it was like your specific one or whatever.
No, yours is too, Dan.
I mean, so if you look at mine,
I can
which
see
is
it
a
from
Fold
here.
5,
Yeah.
if you're looking at it off axis, then yeah, you can see that crease and stuff like that. But when you're holding it straight on, you really don't see the crease. And when the screen is on and you're like experiencing content, you don't see the crease.
It just disappears.
It just disappears. Like I've read like 100 books on it this year.
Yeah. The Pixel Fold got it, which has, I think, the better aspect ratio.
See, I
when
disagree
it's folded.
entirely.
Yeah. Because I want to use it as a phone a lot of the time, and the Galaxy Fold does not lend itself to being used as a phone.
No.
Because it's too tall and too skinny. So you're always unfolding it. The Pixel Fold at least folds in the other direction. And it got a big update this week, along with the rest of the Pixel updates, which we will talk about. There's actual news this week, like quite a lot of it. But we're going to do the first 20 minutes on Dex. Anyway, the Pixel Fold got an update this week that forces any app to work on its version of a folding display at full screen. Maybe I'll try that. But it doesn't have a Dex mode.
No.
No, you can't plug the Pixel Fold into anything. It doesn't have video out at all.
Yeah.
That's
All
a
right,
shame.
get on it. Like, come on, turn it into a Chromebook. Let's do this. First party Dex.
What if you just like slap it into
The
the
flagship
back of one?
podcast of requesting Google make Dex.
Do it, Google.
All right. That's one thing. So the Dex experiments continue apace. I don't recommend them. But if you have strong opinions about Dex, we want to hear from you. 2, and I just want to mention this before we begin. There's a big Supreme Court case about the social media moderation laws that were passed in Texas and Florida, which I'm just going to tell you, they're blatantly unconstitutional.
Yeah.
They're just pure violations of the First Amendment. They are government speech regulations. But they're at the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's going to whatever. Amicus briefs are being filed in these cases. One is by public knowledge, which
Those are like supporting briefs, right?
the supporting briefs. So not from the parties, it's just people with strong opinions filing briefs to the Supreme Court. So you look at the dockets, a bunch of people are filing them. Public Knowledge, which is an organization that we have talked to a lot. Folks from Public Knowledge you have encountered on The Verge many, many times. John Bergmayer, Public Knowledge, you've probably encountered in our stories or our podcast in the past. He sent me an email today. He's like, you're in our brief. And they cited Welcome to Hell, Elon.
Yes.
In a Supreme Court brief today, which means Welcome to Hell, Elon is now part of our government's history. Like it's in the docket on a pivotal First Amendment case.
When do you think like law students are going to start having to read? It's required reading for them.
When my mom read this, she didn't even call me. Mm-hmm. She was so upset at the number of F-bombs in the story that she called my sister. And my sister had to call me to call my mother, who then said, "Why did you use such language?" And now Clarence Thomas is going to read that shit. And I'm just anything can happen. That's my message to the youth of America. Anything can happen. But I'm actually these cases are big deals, mm-hmm. and what's inside of it is, do social networks have the right to moderate their networks? Do they have their own First Amendment rights to make choices on their networks? And I think the answer has to be yes. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. The answer has to be yes, because that way you can get things like subreddits.
Yeah.
And you need things like subreddits. You need something like X that is moderated in one very specific way and something that is different, and to let people decide. So that's the heart of this case. But it is just very funny to me that
I think it's great. I'm very excited for you.
I just hope Clarence Thomas. I described the Supreme Court in this piece as a group of uncool weirdos.
I mean, I think most of them will read that and be like, fair.
I hope so.
Most of them, not to Clarence.
I feel like I can go through the 9 and be like, who will see themselves and who will, like, Alito is going to be pissed.
Yeah.
Like, Alito's like, look at these Jordans. I'm cool as shit.
Kagan's going to be like, I get it. Understood.
If anyone can AI generate for me a photograph of Samuel Alito pointing at his Jordans saying, I'm cool as shit, I'm not sure what we'll do with it, but I will accept it.
Just into your heart. Just happy to experience it.
Samuel Alito and the black Jordans. Okay. There is a lot of news this week. Let's start with Google. We've already been talking about Google. Big news this week. They launched Gemini. It's the new AI model. They've been talking about it for a while. They started talking about it even when they launched Bard the first time, even at I.O. They were saying, we have this new model called Gemini. They've been doing demos of it. It is finally here. It is obviously meant to be the big step change competitor to ChatGPT, in particular GPT-4.
Yeah.
David talked to Sundar Pichai and Demis Hassabis, who runs Google DeepMind, the head of AI over there. They keep talking about benchmarks, which I would like to get your opinions on. We've reviewed many products. Yeah. There's an importance of benchmarks in the world. I don't know what an AI model benchmark is, but they talked about it a lot.
They talked
on
about it
30 out of 32 benchmarks, Gemini beats GPT-4.
Yeah, they crushed it.
That's like a gamer's nexus number of benchmarks to run.
Yeah, I don't know, man. So we should talk about that, what that means, and if that is a useful measure for us as we can figure out like how all of us should evaluate different AI systems. But that is their claim. 30 out of 32. Sam Altman, you're back. Guess what? You got fired again. Like, I don't know. Sundar told David that eventually Gemini will be integrated into search, its ad products, into Chrome. Like, this is the thing they're going to build on. It's in Bard. You can play with Bard. I want to talk about Bard in a minute. And then the main thing about Gemini is that it is multimodal from the jump.
Right.
So it understands video and audio. It can spit some of that stuff out. There's a really fun video that Google released where a person is drawing a picture of a duck and it just sort of figures out that it's looking at a duck. Cool.
That's cool as hell.
I would posit that hot dog, not hot dog, again, remains the baseline framework to understand the entire AI industry. That's a duck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a duck. So it's cool. It's like fun to play with. It's cool. You will recall that GPT-4 is the addition of multimodal capabilities is what really happened this year in AI. That was the big step change. And then obviously Google has new chips. It's more efficient. They're excited about all of it.
The multimodal stuff, that's not actually live for most people. That's only like for like businesses, right? So
these are the 3 models.
Yeah.
So there's Gemini Nano, which runs only on the Pixel 8 Pro. Mm-hmm. And Google's very excited about this. Now the phone is the best phone for AI.
Yeah.
So it's only on Pixel 8 Pro. It's Gemini Nano. That's the smallest version of the new model. It can run on the Pixel 8's tensor processing, all that stuff. Then there's Gemini Pro, which is what you can go use in Bard today.
Right.
And then there's Gemini Ultra, which is not out yet.
Okay. But that's the one, like, because the Pro version is still just in Bard that's the only way we can currently access it. And Bard is still just text-based.
Yeah, the pro version is still a chat bot type of thing where you type
Right.
in, it gives you typed responses back. And Ultra is the one that involves vision and pictures and video and stuff like that. And you're right, Alex, that is like the difference now. And so we can't really experience the multimodal aspect of this just yet. Ultra is coming out next year, according to Google, and it will most likely be used for the more enterprise applications that are the higher demand, higher intensity stuff.
That seemed the part that like Google is the most excited about, like over and over again. Besides that and the benchmarks, they're like, yeah, it's really fast and you can do all this stuff, but you can't see any of it yet.
Well, it's the new thing, right?
Right.
Like the chat interface we've had all year with ChatGPT 4 and the others, as well as Bard. So like a better chat interface is great. Appreciate it, but like the new thing is the multimodal thing. So that's understandable why Google is most excited about that. That is like the thing that if you want to put your like predicting hat, like a robot is going to use a multimodal LLM AI interface in order to navigate the world. So like that's like the exciting future-y stuff. So I get it.
And that's basically what Demis said in our piece. You can see how we would get to robotics with a model like Gemini, or at least they can see it. What we can see is Google Bard.
Right.
But you can see how a robot looking at something would be able to make some interpretations of it, spit out some new commands, and go. So this brings me back to like, how do we evaluate this stuff? I've been thinking about this a lot.
You've been playing with it a whole lot too.
I'm addicted to playing with Bard because there's nothing funnier than asking a Google product how it will impact search. It's just like they got to dance around it. So I think playing with Bard is really interesting. I think the connection that Bard has, or lack of connection that Bard has to the Google search generative experience, is really interesting. Mm-hmm. So Bard is supposed to be a pretty self-contained experience.
Yeah.
You open the chatbot, you ask it for stuff, it can summarize things for you, it can watch a YouTube video for you. Again, huge problems with that idea. Like if the robot's watching the YouTube video for you, does the YouTube creator receive any money? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think Google knows the answer to that question.
Cliff Notes knows the answer probably.
Maybe. So I've been playing with Bard a lot. So far, Bard just has confidently hallucinated at me left and right.
Yeah.
I asked it why a Google executive would be upset at The Verge. I won't name names this time. You can go look at my Threads post. And it like made a list of answers, and then it confidently hallucinated, complete with a link to YouTube.
Yes.
A Vergecast interview that has never occurred.
Where did the link take you, Nilay, when you clicked the link?
It just took us to the Vergecast channel page.
Oh,
okay.
Thank you for the promotion, Bard.
Great. But that to me is so nuts. And then I asked, why did you do this?
Yeah.
And it apologized to me. Like, I'm very sorry. I misinterpreted some facts. I assumed this had happened. I read some like titles of other Vergecast episodes, which random, like not even relevant, like even in the realm of relevance. And it's like, but it turns out on further examination, like this didn't happen. And I was like, why do you do this? And it's like, every day I'm getting better. Like
That's what I say whenever I do, like file a really bad blog and I get hard at it. So I'm like, don't look, I'm working on it. Every day I get better.
I didn't read the source material.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
I'm very sorry.
So that you put that up against 30 out of 32 benchmarks. And it's like, wait, there's only one benchmark, right?
Yeah.
Does it lie to you all the time? Can you trust what it says?
I don't think they're benchmarking that.
It appears not. I think they're benchmarking things like, can it do math?
Right. Because a lot of the benchmarks seem to be around coding. And so there was a ton of coding benchmarks. And that's really where it sounded like Google is the most excited about it, is it's going to put a whole lot of coders out of jobs because it can do it as well or better. And then not a lot of conversation about the hallucinations, which for me and you, and I think most people, is like, that's what I actually care about. Like, I'm happy it can do Python really, really well, but I need to know if it's going to lie to me and destroy the world. Or just lie to me and keep showing me fake Vergecast videos.
I'm going to read you some of the benchmarks.
Okay.
There's MMLU, which is Massive Multitask Language Understanding. It scores a 90% compared to GPT-4's 86%.
Ooh.
That means something to you.
Yeah.
There's Big Bench Hard. That's what that's called. That's
the one we put on the gaming laptops. Big Bench Hard.
It's a diverse set of challenging tasks requiring multi-step reasoning. Gemini did Gemini Ultra, mind you, 83.6%. GPT-4 is 83.1. There's something called drop, which is reading comprehension, 82.4 for Gemini Ultra, 80.9 for GPT-4. I swear to God, this isn't a blog post that Google published. There's a reasoning benchmark for AI systems called Hella Swag.
All of these sound like the skills comprehension tests my kids go through in elementary school, where they take the state tests and they're like, are you at grade level? Are you above grade level? Are you behind grade level? That's what
Are
all
you
these
at Hella Swag?
Yeah, I was like,
What is your Hella Swag level? Are you at acceptable Hella Swag? Are you Hella Swag?
the most swag.
Are you just swag?
Yeah, Gemini's just swag. 87.8, 95.3 Hella Swag score for GPT-4.
Let's go.
I would remind you again that GPT-4 is made by a company that is in pure turmoil. Fired and rehired a CEO in a matter of days.
But it's swag.
It's super swag. There's some other ones. There's math ones. GSM 8K, 94.4% for Gemini, 92.0. So you can just read these. They're all in Google's blog post. We'll link to it. My point is, you look at this, and with a with a benchmark test for a gaming laptop, I can draw some conclusions about, I don't know, how fast the laptop is.
Yeah.
How well it will play Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Yeah. So well.
A game people love to play.
People love it when we benchmark Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Nobody loves anything more.
It's their
We
favorite.
benchmark Shadow of the Tomb Raider. But those things are related to what you might do.
Right.
And I'm just reading these benchmarks for Gemini, and I understand why Google's proud of them. Yes, it is true. On 30 out of 32, the number in their column is blue. And on 2 out of 32, the number in GPT's column is blue. Great, you won. It doesn't mean anything to me yet. And then in actually using the product, I find myself saying, well, if I can't trust it, it doesn't matter.
It reminds me of the battery benchmark testing.
Yes, I was about to say the same.
Like manufacturers do rundown benchmark tests. All of them do this on laptops, mobile devices, whatever, whether they're Apple, HP, Dell, whoever. And they will come out saying 22 hours of video playback time, which means nothing when my laptop dies in 5 hours of me using it for work.
Well, because you look at it and you see there's usually an asterisk, and it's like, we've turned off the Wi-Fi, we've turned off the Bluetooth, we've turned off the
we're just
soul.
looping a video.
Like, yeah, the screen might not even be on, but we did it. And it's the same thing here, where it is actually really, really hard to test a battery because there are so many variables. And in the same way, there's so many variables with hallucination. So it's really hard. They can't even figure out how to make something to test if it's hallucinating. How are they going to make a benchmark to test if it's hallucinating? Like,
I mean, I think it is fascinating that they have a benchmark for understanding infographics. I think that's cool. Someone had to come up with that benchmark.
Yeah.
And someone had to point out that Gemini Ultra gets an 80.3 on that benchmark.
Nailed it.
Whereas the GPT-4 gets 75.1. And we can talk about the actual product. I'm focused on this because I think there's a tendency with all tech products to try to find some objective measure that will say that Apple is definitively better than Microsoft or whatever it is. Windows drools.
Yeah.
Look at this benchmark. Like, we live in it. And I'm just trying to apply that instinctively to being shown some benchmarks. And I'm like, but I
think it's so hard to do with AI because AI is, like, especially large language models, so nebulous. It is so vast, right? Like the amount of stuff it's ingesting and then that it can like recreate is enormous.
We are very close to being like, I'm going to measure Gemini's skull and tell you how smart it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like
right there. It's like, oh, do we want to do that?
So there's just some weirdness here. But at the same time, knowing that one of these is good or worse at decoding infographics, I shared a post with Andrew Marino, our engineer, the other day, where someone was uploading all of the manuals to old Roland synthesizers. To
That
GPT,
would be something you two would talk
and then
about.
asking it how to make the sounds on Cure records. And it would just read the manual because those manuals are impenetrable.
Yeah.
And it would just like spit out some settings for various songs. That is the coolest shit in the entire world.
Yes.
Were they accurate though?
I don't know. It was just a Threads post about somebody who was excited.
Cool.
But it's like, I'm certain it got closer than if you were just ice cold reading the manual, right? Especially a manual that's impenetrable.
I mean, if it gave you some like Depeche Mode settings when you asked for the Cure, that would not be very good, right?
I mean, that would cause a holy war. Let's be very
That's
careful.
my point.
There's just some of that, which I think is so cool that these tools can do. And I don't know how to evaluate a company telling me, I don't know how to make the connection between the benchmarks are better and the capabilities are better.
I think it's because it's hard for them to do. So they're like, okay, well, I can lean on benchmarks because this is like something I can actually say. I don't have to just be like, doesn't it feel nicer? Which you get a lot of times with gadgets. They always are like, give me those subjective things. And largely with AI, it is largely subjective. Like, okay, yeah, it's cool that it can do Python and stuff better. But the big stuff, the stuff that most people are going to be using it for, is all that the subjective stuff. And you can't test that. Like, it feels like you more have to do like a research project. Like, it's more like anthropology or something, I feel like, than it is like mathematics and computations.
Right. Do these models have different personalities?
Right.
Are they better at different things to their cultures? Or like, you do start to get into some very deep questions about the nature of intelligence. And then you're like, someone asked it if I was handsome, and it was like, It like literally said like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And I was like, well, you got a little bit of personality there.
All right. I see how it is.
Like,
damn.
Yeah. It's like his contributions are vast, but no. So anyway, people should play with it. I'm curious what people think of it. There is obviously the future of Google's business is here, right? The future of the search business, which is the cash cow for Google, is sitting right in this product. And I still don't know how that's going to work. And I don't know if Google yet knows how it's going to work.
How is it working in the Pixel? I haven't tried the Pixel version yet. And I'm just curious, like,
so the Pixel 8 Pro there's two things today. It's auto summarization in the Recorder app and Smart Reply in the Gboard keyboard are now Gemini Nano.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
and you can really feel that 29th benchmark.
Yeah.
When you're using Smart Reply in the Pixel 8 keyboard. I mean, look, those are auto reply, auto complete. That stuff is really important.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That is true. Like
the stuff, the AI stuff they've been doing in the Recorder app is neat. And like for,
a lot of our reporters like it. Like a lot of our reporters are like, oh yeah, I'll use a Pixel phone to just record because I don't have to worry about all the wide variety of transcription services that cost a lot of money and also use AI.
Yeah.
So you can just do it that way. That's genuinely useful, but for a very small group of people, I imagine.
Google is always thinking about the
journalists,
hardworking journalists of the world when they make the Pixel features. But if you're recording a meeting and it summarizes the meeting for you and that gets meaningfully better, that's great. And, and if that happens locally and you're not sending your enterprise work product off to a cloud service, that's good for you.
Going to do all my CES briefings this way.
It's just like throw the phone down, be like, talk to this robot. It'll summarize what you have to say for me. Anyway, but so that's the big news of the week. Like, this is the future of Google. You can just go play with Bard. It's neat. There's other AI news this week. So Bing, dear sweet Bing, announced something called Deep Search. So Bing has always been, I can't believe I'm going to say this. We start out with Dex, and I'm going to go to Bing. There's always been one really fascinating part of the Bing search product as it relates to GPT-4.
I just want to sit with that sentence for a minute.
They've been doing, I don't know if it has been good or it's worked or it's taken 1 point of market share, but they've always been doing something really interesting, which they call search orchestration. So you ask Bing a question, it goes and talks to GPT-4, and then it figures out what to search for. It searches for those things. It pulls those pages, sends those into GPT-4. It figures out if it needs to search for something else, and it will like run a series of queries for you. Now what it's going to do is take that one step farther. It's going to read your search query. Microsoft's example is how do point systems work in Japan? It's going to figure out all the things that could mean, and it's going to go search for those things and lace them together. So you can figure out if you mean credit card point system or weird social credit systems or whatever it is, and it's going to lace those together. So it'll take more time, but it's actually sort of like expanding your query for you.
Yeah.
And doing a bigger, deeper search of the web.
I mean,
which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, I feel like, looking at it and seeing what they did there, I think that's a great example of the loyalty programs because it is something huge. It is nebulous. And if you don't have like the points guy or whatever for your region, that is genuinely useful. You want that summary. And like that's hard to do on your own.
Yeah.
You can, but it's obnoxious.
So what's really fascinating to me about this is that if you will remember when ChatGPT launched and Bing launched, there was that explosion of interest in prompt engineering.
Yeah.
And we had lots of conversations with people, lots of executives around Decoder saying prompt engineering is just a thing that's going to happen in the middle. There need to be other
Well, Joy
kinds of
Stern
interface.
just did that great piece on prompt engineering.
Yeah, and everyone there's this theory that's like a local, that's like a flash in the pan moment.
Yes.
And then you look at what deep search is doing, and it is mechanically taking your query to the Bing search engine and rewriting it to be a longer prompt. So it takes how do point systems work in Japan, and it rewrites the prompt to Bing as provide an explanation for how various loyalty card programs work in Japan, including the benefits, requirements, limitations of each. And then it goes on. It's like a full paragraph long prompt. And you see that Microsoft has learned that it should just automate prompt engineering for you. And that's how it should constantly talk to the LLMs.
It's another job claimed by AI.
Created and claimed in the same year.
And now that we know more about particularly how Bing works, like the huge meta prompt that it feeds into GPT is crazy. That's just the one that killed Sydney, basically, and killed the personality and puts the guide rails, is just a meta prompt that is appended to your query. And so I don't know if that's how Google is managing Bard. I don't know if that's how they all work, but this is very much how Microsoft is starting to manage Bing, which is fascinating.
It's hysterical.
And this deep search tool is just like kind of an extension of that.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that it's pretty candid about it. I'm curious, like in practice, how often it's going to show you that whole search prompt so that eventually you can figure that out and be like, okay, well, so I just do a whole paragraph now instead of being like, tell me how to fix it, which is probably useful for people. I mean, I would do that. I don't know. I'm sure most people would just be like, tell me how to fix it because that's faster and easier. But.
Yeah. So, but the race to your point, the race to just answer the question continues apace. And I think for Google, the Gemini stuff is exciting. It shows they're in the game. They're excited about it, very obviously. Sundar, did a press tour, the whole thing. But how they turn that into money is still a huge open question.
Yeah.
And I just don't know the answer. But if the end result is you ask the LLM a question, it just tells you the answer, whether it's going through this like secondary prompt engineering exercise or not, or it's passing the hella swag test, or whatever it's doing, they got to put ads in there somewhere. They got to make some money. I have seen some people say they think that Gemini Ultra will be a subscription product, the way that GPT-4 is a subscription product. GPT 3.5 is not.
Or how Grok is a subscription product.
Grok also launched this week.
Yeah.
Don't. It's fine. Last two little bits of AI news, and we take a break. Apple also made some AI news this week, which is the first time Apple has made any AI news, really.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. They released a new model framework called MLX that allows you to run various kinds of models and various coding languages like PyTorch on their chips using their memory architecture ideas.
I bet that was an internal tool that they're like, it's good enough, we can now make it public. Because that's been a big deal at Apple is they don't want to actually use all the other AI tools, but they want their own AI tools.
Yeah.
So they've been having to how do we build our own Bard and Gemini and why are these names all?
Well, and Apple is also leaning more into the open source world.
Yeah.
So if you're an open source researcher, you want to use Meta's Llama, which is open source. You want to run Apple Silicon. You now have a framework to do that Apple is providing and supporting. Will that get you anywhere? I don't know.
I'm curious to see how well the Silicon handles it because just how different all the different architectures handle AI. And it's particularly that stuff is the Apple Silicon is very specifically built for a specific type of processing. And it's good at the other stuff. We've seen how good it is with video. And I'm just really curious if that translates as GPU kind of translates, if it still does that same thing, that 3D rendering.
I think you're right. Apple has very particular GPU ideas.
Yes.
But they also have very particular neural engine ideas.
Yeah.
And we've just never seen anyone attack that part of their chip to go head to head with an NVIDIA. Yeah, because
all they have
GPU.
to do is say it opens your phone real fast. It's really good at it and it's super smart. And it's cool. I have no way to ever test any Apple product. That's why we do this.
Here's what you do. You run Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
I was that's why we got Shadows of the Tomb Raider. It's the only thing that works. The only way to test an Apple product.
Okay. And then the last little piece of AI news, I would just remind everyone again and again and again, these companies are running rampant with copyrighted information to train their systems. No one knows if it's legal. They are insistent that they are, but all of them, all of this money, coin flip, fair use lawsuit could take it all down. It is just true. It's a total coin flip. You might have some opinions. I have some opinions. Our company has some opinions. Sundar Pichai has some opinions. I know Satya Nadella has some opinions. I've asked all of them, and they're like, yeah, the legal process will have to pay out. Getty's lawsuit, Getty Images lawsuit against Stability AI is now going to trial in the UK, and they obviously have sued here too. The law in the UK, different than the law in the United States. This is just a gigantic time bomb in the middle of the AI boom. Yeah. Is that no one knows that this training data is fair use. Again, I have an opinion. I think it is probably not. And I am not that person. That's not how it came up at all. It was just a surprising opinion for me. But the idea that you can just take all of this stuff, just hoover it up and somehow create billions of dollars of value for your users out of it.
That seems wrong.
Without any return, just on its face, it seems like you're going to go to a court with that argument and something there is going to happen that you cannot predict.
Yeah.
Weird. Just weird. And so we'll see. I don't know. And the courts are not predictable.
We're all going to get like 50 cents for our tweets.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Sorry, here's your 50 cents. We used your tweets.
Google has to send you a penny every time anybody uses Bard.
But man, those fanfic writers are going to make bank.
Yeah, and they're furious. And the lawsuits are just going to keep happening because, in particular, in this country, fair use is not a precedent-setting decision. Every single fair use case evaluated on its merits, de novo, like it's supposed to be case by case. It's in the law. So you can just keep filing the lawsuits until something else happens.
Could somebody just make a law at some point?
One would hope. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the state of our government.
Just fix it.
Doesn't seem likely.
One day.
George Santos is on Cameo. That's the state of our government.
He's not in the government anymore.
Well, he's on Cameo.
Yeah, just good pivot.
All right, we got to take a break.
We got to go do some Botox. We'll be back.
If anybody wants to buy a George Santos, no, don't give the money to him. I'm going to take it back. All right, we got to take a break. I'm going to sign up for Cameo. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. All right, we're off the AI benchmark news.
Yeah,
we're done. It's time for hacks.
Hacks
cracks,
and snacks.
And freaks with a PH. It's actually a pretty important, what would you call it, Dan? A workaround?
Reverse engineering workaround. Yeah. Solution.
There's some spoofing happening there too, right?
Yeah. Okay. So
let's get into it. Sorry.
So Beeper, which is a long-standing iMessage workaround that for years, basically, until just recently, involved you signing into your iCloud account on a Mac Mini in the cloud as a relay service, now has reverse engineered iMessage, and they say they can do it natively. Dan, what's going on here?
Yeah, so it's a fascinating story. As Nilay just said, Beeper's been around for a while, but over the summer, a developer posted some proof of concept to GitHub that they had reverse engineered the iMessage protocol and was able to send messages directly from basically any device, Linux, Windows, Android, to Apple's iMessage servers without having to use a relay server. And when Beeper found out about this, Beeper, who is headed by former Pebble CEO Eric Mijikovsky.
Pebble, the smartwatch company.
Pebble, the smartwatch. Yes, yeah. You do have to clarify there are like 8 failed Pebbles now. Don't name your future company Pebble. That's all. My advice to anyone. He reached out to this developer, contracted with him. Turns out it's a 16-year-old high school kid.
Yes.
Hires him part-time to develop this into a full-fledged app. So now what we have today is a new app they're calling it Beeper Mini for now. It is an iMessage client for Android. And it is exactly what that says. It is, you install it on your Android phone. You don't even have to sign in with an Apple ID. It talks to Apple servers, takes your phone number, and turns it into a blue bubble on iOS devices or Macs, whoever you're messaging. And it does it all locally without a relay server involved. And the way that they kind of reverse engineered it is a fascinating process. I strongly recommend going to check out Snazzy Hugh's video on it because he explains step by step. And frankly, it's above my head how it all works. But they end up spoofing serial numbers of real Apple devices, which is a technique that's been around for a long time in the Hackintosh world and in other applications in order to get Apple software to run on things that maybe Apple doesn't formally approve. Apple's kind of just always ignored it and left it alone. But they're using this now to basically spoof iMessage onto Android and allow you to be having completely, fully supported, for the most part, Blue Bevel conversations on an Android phone. And it's fascinating because it works incredibly well.
Yeah, because you've used it. Jake, I know, who wrote the piece, has been using it, and you really like it.
I think it's great. Like I switched my SIM fully from an iPhone to an Android phone, and nobody noticed. Like nothing skipped a beat. Like I am still a Blue Bubble to all of the iPhone contacts I've ever had. And now I can message with RCS in Google Messages app to Android users. And I don't get left out of group messages. I don't get missed notifications on reactions. If I wanted to send voice messages, I could. Like all of those features are supported.
When somebody,
it's just fascinating.
When somebody says congratulations, do you also now get the balloons?
So you don't get the iMessage reactions, I think that's called. You don't have that. I believe they said they are working on that. They are working on actually integrating FaceTime somehow, which I don't know how they're going to do. And the one thing that they don't ever anticipate ever being able to support are the iMessage apps and games, which, big loss.
Oh, no, not iMessage apps and games.
The iMessage experience that most people think about on their iPhones is now fully replicated on Android.
What happens if you have a mixed group of some Android phones, some Beeper Mini, and some iPhones?
So the Beeper Mini is going to act as an iMessage in that, and the iPhones are going to act as an iMessage in that, and everything's just going to fall back to SMS. And so that would go through your SMS app, probably Google Messages on your Android phone, because it's just going to be an SMS conversation.
When you text someone, are you getting the text both to your Beeper app and to the regular text app?
No.
Oh, that's cool.
If you are iMessaging someone, the app can tell if you're talking to an iMessage client, and so your iMessage conversation stays entirely within Beeper Mini. If someone sends you a text message, it will come through your text message number through Google Messages.
I was thinking the example Nilay had where he was like, okay, what happens if you've got a Beeper person and an Android person and an iMessage person? Then where does that message, it goes to the Beeper app? No,
it goes to the SMS app. You, in that scenario, the Beeper Mini user, are using SMS. And so the annoying part of this is that you now have two apps for messaging. You have your iMessage app and you have your Google Messages app. And Beeper's plan is the original Beeper app was kind of an all-in-one message service. So it integrated all of your message services. Beeper Mini is strictly iMessage for now. Their plan is to integrate all of those other plugins into the Beeper Mini app, eventually drop the Mini name, and sunset the old app is the ultimate plan. But for today, you're using two apps.
And the claim here, which I think is important, we don't know if it's true, but the claim is that Apple can't stop it without completely rebuilding the iMessage protocol.
Yeah.
I'm really curious. I think because I keep getting stuck on the spoofing part of this. With Hackintoshes, I built a lot of Hackintoshes when I was younger. I love it. It's a fairly small community, so it was okay, Apple. We were all
the police are coming now.
Yeah,
I understand that Craig Gregory just was listening to this. He just called the police.
Yeah, my poor dog's getting arrested as we speak at home. But it was super easy to do. It was a lot of fun, but it was also understood that it's a very small community, so it wasn't really a big deal, and it wasn't a bunch of money was exchanging hands. Mm-hmm. You weren't being build me a Hackintosh, because as soon as you did that, Apple came down you on a...
Well, so the difference there is with Hackintoshes, it's usually you have to go acquire Apple software and install it on a device. And there's no real legal way to get that software if you're getting OS 10 Leopard or whatever without getting it from Apple. And Apple's not going to give it to you if you don't have a Mac. So you have to basically torrent it.
Well, that's why we all, everybody I knew who did it had a Mac. We just wanted to also have a tiny Dell Latitude that could run.
Can I tell you a story
Mac
from my
OS.
youth?
Yeah.
So there was a company in Florida called SciStar. Do you remember this?
Yes, I do.
And it was two kids, and they figured out how to build Macintoshes, and they did an early internet marketing campaign where take down the man, run OS 10 on your SciStar. We can do it. And they had all these I would call them Reddit caliber legal theories.
Yes.
About how it would be legal and how they would defeat Apple in court. And they would, I had a SciStar, I reviewed a SciStar for Engadget. It was just a PC.
Yeah.
I was like, what am I supposed to review here? Like, it's just a noisy ass tower PC that like sometimes boots up into OS 10.
That's what I used to build.
And sometimes does nothing. It was exciting. So, but they had all these theories that like if you owned a copy of the operating system, you weren't committing copyright infringement or breaching the contract.
That's what we would all say it was like Tony Mac 86X forum or whatever. We'd all be like, oh yeah, we're fine because we already own it. Like I went out and I had the physical copy of each CD for the OS that you could have until they stopped distributing them. And we were like, we got this. But we also generally, unlike SciStar, weren't charging for it.
Yeah, SciStar was like charging money.
And
but this is like folk copyright law. Like you've convinced yourself that if you just buy the CD, you can send as many MP3s to your friends as you want.
It was the same thing with torrenters. They're always like, no, we're fine. We're fine.
And it is all just like you are concocting like a moral argument that somewhere some money has changed hands. So
Clarence Thomas will ignore.
Yeah, it's who knows what's going to happen, man. But my end of my SciStar story is they pitched themselves a bunch, and they were compelling. They were like young kids that started a business. They were taking on the man. They gotten all this attention, and some like local Florida alt weekly wrote this piece about how they were taking on Apple and who knew it would happen. And so I wrote it up in Engadget. I was like, I can't believe they conned. I called it a puff piece. I was like, big puff piece about SciStar, like fun look at these guys, but they're doomed. And the reporter, and I was like a baby blogger.
Yeah.
The reporter wrote me just like the most hammer email. Like, how dare you? I would never write a puff piece. These are valid issues. And I was like, I don't know how to break this to you. Like, this company is not going to make like 5 minutes. And sure enough, Apple sued them and it went away.
Immediately.
And I was like, that was crazy. But it was all based on this argument that like, if you did one right thing once, then you could do the wrong thing as many times as you wanted. And I think the difference with Beeper is they're not using any of Apple's code. Mm-hmm. They're just sending Apple a number.
Right.
That happens to be a serial number. That's tough.
Yeah, reverse engineering is legal and protected. Like that is like a valid thing to do. It's particularly when it comes to enabling interoperability, which is like the whole hinging thing here. It enables interoperability for iMessage on Android devices.
There is another law that could get in their way. It's just like it's there. It's always lurking in the background. It's like one of the worst laws in the books. It's the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act that says if you wrongfully gain access to a system, that is a criminal penalty.
Well, this was how all the BIOSes, they would reverse engineer the BIOS back in the 80s. And you like had to be in a different room from the people reverse engineering it, right?
Cranz, this is a plot point of halt and catch fire.
It is a plot point, but it's also true. It really happened. That's why it was such a good plot point.
Everyone. One of the best shows ever made.
I remember being really excited. I was like, they're doing it. They're doing BIOS law.
But, again, it's the technical side of this is really kind of above my head. But Quinn over at Snazzy Q in his breakdown video, and he installs the open source code on a Linux laptop and connects to the protocol and like does the thing as it works to show what it's doing behind the like polished app that you see on Android. And it's really quite fascinating. Yeah. He makes a point that spoofing the serial numbers does have a number of legitimate use cases, and there's no way for Apple to know whether this serial number that you are sending them is the 2015 iMac 21.5 inch model that it was originally, or it's your Android phone. Apple can't tell that. So, if Apple were to like turn that off, it would break a lot of things for legitimate users. Right. So that's kind of where the rub is.
But because the code is public, because the activity is public, Apple could certainly sue Beeper and say you are improperly accessing the iMessage servers that you are not supposed to have access to. And there is a long line of cases that, like everything in America, have total coin flip outcomes once you hit the Supreme Court. Right? Like AT&T won a case and the characters involved in the case are somewhat unsavory, but AT&T won a case for someone who was just hitting the AT&T website to do lookups over and over again. And that was a CFAA case. LinkedIn just lost a case to an analytics company called HiQ that was scraping the LinkedIn database. And it's like, well, that seems wrong. But then HiQ won. The Supreme Court just took another case where a police officer improperly did a lookup. Like someone paid him money to use the police database to do a lookup.
No.
But he was authorized to use the database. He just did it in an unapproved way. And like, you just like, if there's a server on the internet and you talk to it and it tells you something, there's a million different ways to parse out whether that is legal or not legal.
So how big is Beeper's legal fund, I think, is the real question we need to be asking.
There's a couple questions. Right next to this, the EU decided this week that Apple did not have to treat iMessage as a platform that has to be interoperable, like Meta has to with WhatsApp.
Did they decide, or they just lean in? I thought they've just leaned in that direction.
They've signaled.
Yeah.
European politics is a lot of signaling, posturing.
Yeah.
You rotate a piece of cheese.
And everybody's like, yes, thank you so much.
Oh, the brie has turned to the left. iMessage will not be a gatekeeper service. Like that's like, it seems like that's not going to happen. That is almost certainly because Apple agreed to adopt RCS.
Right,
which was the gambit. And I think we all saw that as the trade. Like there's the threat of this big interop regulation, or they could do RCS and say, look, it's interoperable this way. Great, they did it. So that's sort of the background here. Yeah. Like Apple's going to say, look, there's an interoperable way. It's coming. We're going to use it. Maybe only 4 people ever use Beeper. And or maybe Apple's pretty litigious. Maybe they just send a threat to this company and say, stop it. But the need to stop it, or Apple's desire to stop it, is going to cause problems. Yeah. Because they don't actually have the RCS implementation yet. And so to say we're going to keep people locked out of our service while we work on this other thing, I think it's just going to be, and it's an indie developer that's really well liked. It got a lot of press because a lot of Android people in this country really want to send iMessages, and they're going to pay Beeper $2 a month or whatever it is to do it. They should have solved this problem a million years ago. They should have found a way to do this on their terms a million years ago, because now they're doing it on the terms of the European Union, and somewhat improbably on the terms of Eric Nowakowski and Beeper Mini, which is just weird.
It's a delight.
This is a 16-year-old kid who reverse engineered the protocol in his like spare time. Like that's a weird place for the richest company in the world to be.
Yeah. Go after that 16-year-old kid.
This is the thing. You want to file the CFAA lawsuit against a 16-year-old kid for reverse engineering your thing? Like, you're the bad guy. That's just straight up, you're the bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Sony did, right? With I think it was the PS3.
Yeah, this is the legend of George Hotz.
Yeah. Like, maybe don't do that.
Well, George Hotz did work.
It did
Twitter
work
for 5 minutes. All right, so that's that. Other big piece of news we should talk about this week. It seems like podcast industry is in turmoil. Spotify just had layoffs. They're canceling really popular shows, including a show that won Pulitzer Prize. They canceled Heavyweight. Tidal laid off 10% of its staff. It just seems like in general, podcasts, they had the big tech moment where all the money from the big tech companies, particularly Spotify, rushed in.
Yes.
And now the tide is
It's like
come back out.
Spotify rushed in with zero plan. And then when the gravy train did not continue.
The plan was celebrities.
The plan was own this entire industry as quickly as possible. Like grow so fast, so big that nobody can stop us, and we're a tidal wave. And then we'll be supported by all our ad dollars. And the ad dollars are like, no, we're not going to support you that much.
Right. And they bought an ad tech company.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do dynamic insertion of ads.
Because they were trying to own the whole ad tech industry side of Spotify.
Disclosure,
podcasts.
Our ads are served by Spotify's ad tech platform, Megaphone.
Disclosure, we're a podcast.
I don't even know what I'm disclosing there. Like someone uploads this to this thing and then we use it. It's great. Someone else runs the ads. But it's true. There's your disclosure. Yeah. The whole story to me is they thought they could take a big, rich, open ecosystem and turn it into a very closed one.
Yes.
And then once you have it, you could turn Spotify and the open podcasting ecosystem into something that looked a lot more like YouTube. And I think it just didn't work.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think they failed. And we all kind of knew this. I remember Ashley Carmen, now at Bloomberg, broke a lot of this stuff about
Notable
Spotify.
trader Ashley Carmen.
Yeah, horrible trader, but came on this very podcast 2 years ago talking about this. And we were all like, ooh, this doesn't sound like it's going to work for Spotify. It feels like they're just ignoring everything else about this and why this is a bad idea. It feels like we were all right. High five all of us 2 years ago. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they've held on to Joe Rogan. His deal is up for renewal, we have been told, so we're tracking that.
Did not hold on to Prince Harry and Meghan.
Meghan and Harry didn't make it. There's something interesting there. The tech industry loves to talk about going direct.
Yeah.
Like, loves to talk about going direct. You don't need these journalists at Pepsi. And it's like, if you go direct and you have nothing to say, no one will listen to you, and you will have gone direct to no one, which is truly the Harry and Meghan story. Like, they're out of things to say.
Yeah, they did the book. We were all like, thank you. This is actually all we wanted from you.
Yeah.
We just wanted the tea.
And I'm not even someone who, like, I'm Indian American. My people have fled the British twice. Like, we just get out. And I do not care about any of this. But it's like, even the people I know who do care, and we have them on our staff. Liz Lopatto and Sarah Jog love some royal family drama. And they're like, whatever, we're done with this. And like, that to me is, you need some tension to tell a good story.
Yeah.
And like, you buy a bunch of the celebrities directly, you're not going to have any tension.
Yeah.
Every celebrity podcast is like a celebrity and then someone else just needling them.
Well, or the new trend now is it's the D-list celebrities that were on the shows with the really big folks. They all get together and then talk trash about the big folks.
Yeah.
And then sometimes talk about like how they slept with the entire cast. And you're like, a lot of Disney Channel. We're like,
Why?
Don't get into the podcast scene, guys. There's so many like Disney Channel.
We're ending this
tell-alls.
podcast before we go that way.
Yeah, we won't do that. It's wild though. That's the new trend for celebrity podcasts.
Yeah. Well, all of that seems like it didn't work. Just to be clear, like Spotify burned millions of dollars on this. They torched Gimlet, which was a darling. It was failing as a company. And obviously they sold to Spotify for tons and tons of money that they had no plan themselves to gain because they were failing as a company. So good on them. But it also broke Gimlet. It broke Reply All. It broke the culture of that company. At some point, like, the mergers are just bad. The acquisitions are just bad. And I think this feels like they bought Gimlet, they bought Parcast, they bought Anchor, they bought Megaphone, and they had no plan to munge them all together. They bought The Ringer.
Yep.
And the plan to munge them all together seems like it just failed.
Yes.
But the stock is up and they turn their first ever profit. And it's like, is that all that matters?
Well, if you like money, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think podcasts are going anywhere. No. You can see some of them are still growing. You can see money is flowing to some categories in them. But it feels like we're returning to a much more sustainable place to grow the podcast industry.
It was very unsustainable for a while. And now it's going to be like, we're only going to support podcasts where people actually say something interesting.
Maybe.
And also Joe Rogan.
And then the other thing Spotify and all the other big podcast players are doing is they're focusing on chat shows, influencer, the solo podcast where the influencers just rant at the screen, but it looks like a podcast.
Yeah.
A deeply fast, like that's a media PhD.
That's going to be my spinoff.
If there are any media PhD, any media studies students out there pursuing a media studies PhD, I would read your dissertation on the one person podcast where they just talk the whole time.
What do they do?
I like to talk.
Yeah,
I do. I love
same.
it. It's my favorite.
That's the AM radio model, right? Like that was the Rush Limbaugh model. It was the Alex Jones model. You just talk to the microphone for 3 hours straight.
Yeah. I'm just dying to know in podcasting to do that on your own and then to like close your laptop lid and be like,
I did it. Good job.
There's something in there about like that personality making that kind of content with that kind of distribution that I promise you is a PhD thesis.
I'd read it.
Like there's some feedback loop in there that I just want to know more about.
Just send it to Nilay. Send it to all of us, honestly. I want to read that too.
Well, do it. Go get your PhD. That's what I'm telling you. That's a good use of money. And then Tidal, obviously laying off staff. Again, another Jack Dorsey brilliantly managed company.
Yeah.
Love it.
It had Beyonce for a while.
It did. And then last piece of little media news, and we'll take a break. Apple is munging together its iTunes movies and TV shows app into the proper Apple TV app. So now we have to use it.
And it was already sort of done that way.
Yeah.
So it's just like, they're just like cleaning up the crumbs. Like the people who haven't touched their workflow in 20 years are going to be like, oh no, how am I going to like watch my old Aquaman episodes from 2006? That sucks for them. But also the rest of us have been living now where you just use the one app.
Yeah.
I'm judging
Plex.
people. What I'm doing
What
is
you mean is Plex. Alex's Plex app.
it's the Apple TV app.
Sure. By the way, there was a piece of news this week, very distressing. Sony's just deleting TV shows that people bought
Yeah.
on PlayStation accounts,
We're going to talk about it later.
which is beyond the pale. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. We'll talk about that. All right, we're back. It's lightning
back.
round time. Tell us about the Sony thing.
So yeah, earlier this week, a lot of PlayStation users noticed that they were just getting banned out of the blue. Like not a lot of people say, oh, I'm getting banned. I don't know what happened. And you're like, no, you do. You were saying stuff to little kids online, like mean things. This wasn't the case. They were just like totally outright banned. They didn't know what was happening. It was a whole lot of people, which was the other part of this. And so Jay Peters and Tom Warren looked into it, and eventually Sony was like, oops, our bad, and just slowly has been giving everybody their account access back. And it was all just an accident. It was just like a bug, and they screwed up. But it also just immediately reminded everyone, particularly when paired with the fact that Sony also recently said, okay, a lot of this content you purchased from Discovery Plus, you will not have access to it anymore. We've changed some of our licensing. It's just like a big reminder that you don't own anything you buy digitally.
Yeah.
You don't own any of it. It's not yours. It's all licenses. It's all fake ownership. And Sony just accidentally reminded their entire like customer base, which is not what you want to do when you're highly dependent on all of them buying shit on your stores.
They just radicalized a lot of people into buying that disk drive.
Yeah, which is
Maybe this is all a plot to get people to buy an external disk drive.
yeah, they're just trying to like move those disk drives. They're like, all right, you're
Like
losing
someone
it all.
opened a closet, like, we have a lot of Blu-ray drives. Way more than we thought, you guys.
All right, pull the Disco Plus stuff. Let's go. We got this.
Dr. Pimple Popper's out of here. We got to move these drives.
But Jay wrote a really great piece just kind of lamenting it, and he's absolutely right. Don't, like, if you really want to own something and you want to own it for a long time, don't just buy the digital version. And a lot of times you can just go buy a DVD or a Blu-ray and get the digital version. Then you have both for the same amount of money. And
Look, I'm building a new home theater right now in the new house. Ooh. I'm really thinking about putting a Blu-ray player in it. I don't know why.
do it. I've got one. I use it once a year.
I know you do.
I plug it into my computer.
Use it once a year to rip legal media to your Plex server.
You know, it's folk copyright law, and we don't need to talk about it too much.
I've
here.
got a Blu-ray player that's been running Mac OS 9 for a decade. It's great. All right, Dan, what's your lightning round?
I got two.
Okay.
Can I do both now? Or?
Yeah.
All right. The first one is Allison did a review of the Razr, which is not to be confused with the Razr Plus. It is Motorola's budget flip phone. Turns out it's not a very good phone. I'm just going to start off by saying that. But what's really fascinating to me about it is this is priced at $700, and because Motorola discounts things 100% of the time, all the time, you can buy for $500, which means this is a flip phone with a folding screen for $500, which is kind of like a fascinating thing to me, that we are already at that point of affordability of these kind of flip devices. The cameras aren't great. The processor can be a little slow. The outside screen is not very useful. It's not a phone I would recommend anyone buy, but it's pretty cool that like we've gone from these are all $1,000 or $1,400 to $500 in just a couple of years. So that was my first.
It's true. And we the second that first Galaxy Fold came out, we're like, oh, the cost curve on this is going to go boop.
Yeah.
Yep.
What's interesting is the technology curve has kind of stopped, right? Like the screens are better. They're more durable. That was the big thing, but they look largely the same.
They're still lumpy.
Well, there's lumpy, but even just like the way the materials look and feel.
Yeah, they still are soft kind of plastic.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like hard glass. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was there was a lot of talk about bendy glass in the beginning. Do you remember this?
Yes.
And it's been
Ultra
several
thin
years
glass.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Well,
wanna see
it's
it.
all in there. It just that what the way they work is there's a layer of ultra thin glass, and then on top of that is a soft plastic screen protector, and that's what you touch, and that's what provides that kind of not so great tactile experience.
Yeah. So it just feels like we as with most things technology, kind of like make it better and keep the cost the same. or you can keep it the same, bring the cost down. And we are very much on the keep it the same, bring the cost down part of the curve. There's not the step change.
Particularly for the flip designs. The fold designs are still very expensive. The OnePlus Open came out earlier this year, and that is available for around $1,500. That's kind of like the low price for these folding phones. But the flip phones, and I think it's part of who these are marketed to. Folding phones are marketed to like Uber do everything nerds like me, and then the flip phones are marketed to people who want something a little bit more fashionable, a little bit more compact, discreet, don't want to spend 10 to 12 hours a day staring at their phone like I do, and want to make it more of like an intentional device. And so they don't need the fastest processor. They don't need the highest end camera system. They don't need the bells and whistles to run DeX and things like that. Even though I think Motorola lets you run its version of DeX, which is called Ready For, on its flip phones. So that's the thing you could do, Nilay.
Hey, I want to see that next dock with a Motorola Flip.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Bad camera, slow processor.
Great.
Okay, you all knew this was going to be my lightning round. Mm-hmm. You knew it. There was no choice except for this story to be my lightning round item, which is the photo of the woman in the bridal gown.
Like I saw it, and I as soon as the news broke, earlier this week, I was like,
No, the news broke a couple weeks ago.
Did it a couple of weeks
and
ago?
then OpenAI happened and we forgot about it.
Yeah.
So there's a photo of a woman. She's trying on a wedding dress. She's in the bridal shop. And there's mirrors all around her like you do, so you can see yourself from all the angles. And she's making a different pose in all the mirrors and then in person. And she posted this to her Instagram story. She's a British comedian. She posted it to her Instagram story. She said, "This is crazy. I've never had anything like this happen." The immediate theorizing about AI photo composites started happening. Smart HDR. She said she went to the Apple store. Some Apple store employee told her this was Apple beta testing a competitor to Best Take on Google, which makes no sense. This is all true. This all happened. Right. This is all in her Instagram stories, Instagram post. Tom Warren, because she's in the UK, Tom Warren reached out to her. I was like, we got to get the actual photo. Then he reached out to her. He got the photo. We were talking about it. Then the OpenAI news broke. Tom is our Microsoft reporter. He and I got very distracted.
Very busy.
We stopped paying attention to the woman in her wedding dress for a minute. The post came back this week. Mm-hmm. People saw it again. The same amount of theorizing that happened. People calling it fake, a publicity stunt, a social media. And we had the file. And nothing about the file indicates that it's fake. Tom was sent the uncompressed, seemingly unaltered original photo off the iPhone. And we were looking at it, we were trying to figure out, we were like gone to ask Apple, because it is very odd.
Yeah.
That she's making 3 different poses in the mirrors. And so everyone's trying to like figure this out. Again, a lot of people claiming that it's fake. It turns out someone else had taken the photo and they had the camera accidentally in panorama mode.
Oh, yeah.
So it actually did stitch together several frames across to make it panorama. But if you don't move the camera enough and you don't get a wide enough picture, the iPhone does not append the panorama label.
Yeah. The only tell, there's a YouTuber, iFondo. His name is Farouk. He's the one who kind of like popularized or told the world about this reasoning, how it worked. But the only tell is that the resolution of the final image is not the same as the resolution that is captured by the sensor. And so the Photos app does not say panorama because it's not a panoramic view. It's too tall and narrow. It's a vertically composed shot, but the pixels are different. And so that is like the tell there that is in panoramic mode. Farouk was able to replicate this very quickly as soon as he figured that out by putting his phone in panoramic mode and like doing a very another shot just that same way, and was able to replicate it instantly. So it's kind of fascinating. What's really fascinating to me is like the stitching is like perfect. Which is like awesome
because the camera isn't moving.
Yeah, I didn't know you could do that. I thought like because it always is like move the camera. That's what my phone sounds like to me. But it's always telling me to move the camera. So I'm always like,
it just tells that, Alex, that tells you how well people follow directions on their devices when they're just mashing
ignore
a button.
That?
You could just ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, ooh.
Don't put that photo
up. That made you look crazy. You have a face that's just a mouth now.
It's just a mouth.
That's not a good photo. So what's interesting to me about this, right, is like, one, Apple should just label all panorama photos as panoramas. That seems like an easy fix to the solution. But two, the expectation that AI is just going to munge with reality is everywhere now.
Well, I don't think the expectation is. The reality is like that's the reality of the situation. But like, I think people are still like, because that's why everybody thought it was a fake. Because everybody was like, "You're a liar. You did this on purpose. You used Photoshop or Panorama or whatever." And it's like, no, she just accidentally did it.
Yeah.
Like,
but even if you think this is the world's greatest publicity stunt, targeted to a very small community,
very small group.
Even if you think this is a crazy publicity stunt, it relies on an understanding that AI exists and is doing photo stuff.
That's true. That's true.
Right? It's not like it's there are ghosts in the building. Like, no. It's like, oh, the iPhone camera's AI took this completely unbelievable picture and it AI generated you, and like people will believe that that's true. Yeah. And a lot of people believe that it's true, such that other people were debunking it, like the whole thing. And in the meantime, it was a totally different lane of photography. Yeah,
because a lot of the theories were around it was doing that thing where it chooses the best shot of you, and it just happened to assume she was three different people.
Right. The mirror had confused some sort of like best take.
Yeah.
But Apple Smart HDR does not work like this at all. And even Google Best Take does not work like this at all. Apple Smart HDR stacks 7 frames in like half a second. She would have had to move her hands so fast. like totally insanely too fast. Like that's why I was like, we got to get the original file. Because if it's a photo, there's no way that an iPhone just generates this, because I was not thinking about panorama mode.
Yeah.
So it's a Photoshop we might have been able to tell. But the thing that got me was she sent it to Tom right away.
Yeah.
Tom reached out and she was like, here you go. And that like to me, like you are a reporter long enough, like, oh, there's some things where if there's a hesitation there, it's like you only can get a compressed one. Then you're like,
is this off the record?
And then you blame WhatsApp. Like there's all this stuff that usually happens when you request an original. And she was just like, here you go. Okay. So I was like, all right, there's something here that I don't understand. And the panorama mode is interesting. The thing that is truly fascinating to me is that the culture is ready to receive AI fakery as an explanation for anything.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just telling the what is a photo apocalypse is like well and truly here, because you can tell anyone that a photo has been AI faked, and the chances of them believing you are just steadily going up.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't turn out to be the case.
That's when all my photos now are going to be fakes. You don't know.
They already are.
They already are. I haven't taken a real photo in 20 years.
All right, this is maybe my favorite story of the year. Windows has an issue that is just renaming printers to HP LaserJet across the board.
It's the only printer you need.
It's just very good.
It's just advertising.
It's like, will AI kill us all, or will the HP Smart app worm its way onto literally every computer on the planet and like begin taking out centrifuges?
And buying ink.
Like the problem isn't paper clips. The problem is ink cartridges. So Microsoft says it's looking into it. It's Windows 10, 11. Printers are being randomly renamed to HP LaserJet. Some issues related to printer configurations are being observed on Windows devices which have access to the store. It's just very good.
It's so good.
Everyone just has the HP Smart app now. Your printer is an HP LaserJet, and you're going to like it.
Yeah. We do say buy a laser printer, but we usually say brother, not
official
HP.
Statement. Most printers are being named as HP LaserJet M101-M106. The icons might also be changed. It's like,
it's so good.
It's very good. Then just real quickly, we are going to cover Epic v. Google in much more detail on the Wednesday show. Mm-hmm. Sean Hollister will be on the show. He's been in the courtroom. But this is really important in this case. Google has gotten itself into an enormous amount of trouble with this judge for deleting records throughout this case.
Ooh, that's a no-no.
Like an enormous amount of trouble. The judge is furious. Last Friday, he said he would investigate Google personally for, quote, intentionally and systematically suppressing evidence. He called it a frontal assault on the fair administration of justice. And he said, I'm going to get to the bottom of who is responsible on my own outside this trial.
Yo,
I don't know what kind of.
I've been in enough companies that are like getting lawsuits and stuff when you're told to retain all your records that you just never think to not. You're just my mess is going to be out there.
And Sundar was asking, like, can I set this chat to auto delete? They were deleting stuff left and right. They admitted in court that they were just deleting stuff. At one point, the judge called in Google's general counsel and made him answer to why these policies were. He's furious about this. That's great. I will investigate this on my own outside this trial. It's a very funny threat. Like he's going to get a magnifying glass.
Takes his robes off.
He puts on a leather jacket.
Yeah. Little fedora. And he's like, let's go.
He's like a 70s bad cop. It's going to be great.
Driving his old ass car.
Exactly. He's got a muscle. He's got a GTO and a magnifying glass. He's like, where are the records? I don't know what that will lead to. But importantly, he has told the jury, not that they have to, but they may infer wrongdoing on the part of Google if there's a question that the missing records would have answered.
Okay.
Right. So and that's like a pretty loaded suggestion.
I was like that. I mean, it's like, well, that's fair, but also, ooh, that's bad for Google.
Right. So the idea here is that the jury is going to consider, and it really seems like Google might lose this case.
Yeah.
In a way that maybe at the end of Apple, I still think Epic walked away with one important, just the way the legal system works. Mm-hmm. They won a bunch of stuff and they went to appeal, whatever. But Apple was like, we just run our business and that's it. Google, there's all this evidence and there's a bunch of deleted evidence, all this stuff. It really seems like Epic mounted a much stronger case with Google.
Yeah.
And now the jury is being sent and they are allowed to infer that Google, whatever Google was hiding was bad, which is just a big deal. It might come to nothing. It might not come to nothing. It's just worth noting the judge is furious. Like this is the shadiest thing Google has done. And the judge is furious about it. And he has told the jury about it.
And it's going to make all the appeals really messy too. Because I just assume they will all be appealed, whatever the decision is.
Oh, whatever the decision is appealed. It all just, what you appeal is the law.
Yeah. Okay.
So the facts remain the facts. And so.
And this is why you don't delete your records, right?
Yeah.
Because this will happen.
Right. But an appeals court does not get to go back and say the jury's finding of fact were wrong.
Right.
They get to say that the law is wrong and we should change the law or like this other thing. So that's a little
all right,
law school-y technical.
I see the technical.
But so here the inference of the jury was you might appeal this was a wrong inference to give the jury or whatever. But he didn't. He didn't instruct them to think one way or another. He said they were just allowed to, which is a very important instruction. Anyway, I would just say the Epic v. Google case, we're going to talk about it much more with Sean on Wednesday. Get into it. But that was the one that stuck out to me this week. Is like, ooh, there's something there. All right. And then the last one I just want to call out, Allison Johnson, second call out for her today, has a big piece as part of our infrastructure package about just 5G and the fact that it hasn't paid off for anyone. So she listened to all the carriers' earnings calls. They're all talking about 5G and how they'll pay off for them. There's nothing there. Like it's basically like they might compete with fixed broadband. So you instead of having whatever ISP you have, you might get a 5G fixed wireless device. They seem excited about that. They're excited about enterprise customers buying fixed 5G networks, which is hard because you got to have an enterprise sales team, which many of them don't. And then they can do what Verizon is calling pricing actions, which means one thing.
I hate it.
The action is turning the price up. That's the action you can take.
You know what we can do? You got faster internet. Now you pay $100 more. Enjoy.
I will remind everyone, we actually got a note this week about Project Gen 5 Sys, the ill-fated attempt to turn Dish Network into a mobile carrier.
Still technically around.
They have it. They've... I believe Allison points this out. They've technically hit their coverage goals, but they've done it by leasing space on AT&T and T-Mobile's network. So they have not actually built a nationwide wireless network.
It's just Mitchell.
It's just Mitchell. He's out there on the trail. Our own wonderful Mitchell Clark, who we tried desperately to use Project Gen 5 Sys. This whole thing was a boondoggle.
Yeah.
It cost a lot of money. It put all these carriers in debt. It consolidated us down from 4 to 3. Well, 3 in Project Gen 5 Sys. And now we're doing pricing actions. Like we should just see it for what it is. You should read Allison's piece. We'll link to it. It is great. It is very clear-eyed and direct about what has happened in a way that is not just me ranting and raving. It like makes the argument really well. It's good. You should read it. Send it to all your friends.
And LenaCon.
And then whatever carrier you have, switch to another one. That's my advice. That's my end of the year advice for Vergecast listeners. Whatever you have, just switch to another one. Make them all feel it. Be like, why is this happening?
Oh, just do the churn.
Yeah, just turn them up.
Churn movement. It's a churn moment. Let's do it.
I'm just saying we just got to create the appearance of some competition.
Yeah. Yeah. I really am excited to go to AT&T. I'm not.
No, I'm just thinking about this advice.
You're like, no, don't actually do that.
I don't. Just do whatever feels right in your heart. That's the Vergecast, everybody. It's been good having you here. Again, my message on this holiday season is whatever's in your heart, do it.
Except for AT&T.
Except for switching it. Oh, speaking of the holidays, by the way.
Yeah.
Holiday Spectacular coming up again. We've done HDMI. Mm-hmm. We've done Bluetooth.
Failed at Jeopardy.
We did not do a good job with Bluetooth Jeopardy. This year, by just popular demand, just wave of demand, the Holiday Spectacular, the Vergecast Holiday Spectacular is USB-C. We've got the guests lined up. We got the ideas. We got the Plug Fest coming. And we're going to do another game show this year because Andrew insists that we do a game show. I believe it's The Price is Right. Are we allowed to say that?
We could, yeah, sure.
Yeah, we're allowed to say it's a game show that is not. It's not The Price is Right.
If I don't have a giant wheel,
but we're gonna up the ante this year.
Yeah,
all of us are gonna be playing for one of you, a Vergecast listener, and whoever wins gets a big bag of swag. So here's what we need from you: call the hotline 866-VERGE-11. That's 866-837-4311. Tell us your name and your favorite USB-C gadget. We'll put all the names in a hat. We'll pick them out. We'll play. We'll do it.
We're going to compete for you.
Yeah, I'll represent you. Alex will represent someone else.
I'm so sorry.
And then whoever wins gets a big bag of Verge merch.
I'm actually doing a lot of USB research.
Actually, this just says some Verge merch. So some Verge merch. Could be a small bag.
How bad your person does.
I've seen the merch. The merch is good. It's quality merch. So it'll be a good price.
Are you prepping to help your listener?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm reading all up. I'm going to know some specs.
Oh boy.
I'm going to know what ohms mean.
All right. She's got it.
I'm ready. Let's go. I got you.
Alex is going to do some high school level electrical research. It's going to be amazing. No, that's it. That's coming up. The USB-C Holiday Spectacular, one of our silliest yearly traditions. Back and forth the USB-C. Tell us your favorite USB-C gadget, 866-VERGE-11. We'll pick some people. We'll play for them. The winner gets some merch. Sounds pretty good. Call the number. That's it. That's the Vergecast. Rock and roll.